Good morning. Welcome to our Hanukkah quiz. We have numbers here 1 through 13. We want to identify some aspect of Hanukkah as it pertains to each one of those numbers. So if I give you the number 1, tell me what is it about Hanukkah that's connected to the number 1?
Some. Go flat, look, oil.
Well, 1 second. The Shama, she said, the one candle that stands above the others, with which you light the others. Okay, very good. What else? They found one flask of oil that was pure. Very good. What else?
One menorah.
One menorah, okay. Okay, 1 is easy.
The one holiday that's equivalent to Christmas.
Yes. That's right. They fought for their faith in one God, which the Greeks did not believe in. They believed in many gods. Okay, so there are a lot more ones that I'm not going to go through, because in the Torah reading, we read about how the Nesiim, the leaders of each of the 12 tribes, in the days of the desert, when the Jews were in the desert.
Not doing that to plastic body.
What's that? So we read, so they dedicated the Mishkan, the tabernacle, by each of the 12 tribes bringing an offering. And we read that on Hanukkah. And part of the offering included one of many different things. There's 1 silver dish, 1 silver bowl, 1 golden cup, 1 young bullock, 1 ram, 1 lamb, 1 goat. The word 1 is used repeatedly. Okay, so now we go to the number 2. What is it in Hanukkah that is associated with the number 2? Okay, you see, it gets harder.
So
The Greeks and the Jews, okay. How many blessings do we recite on the 7 of the 8 days of Hanukkah?
2.
2 blessings. 1 blessing on the actual lighting of the menorah, Lahadlik Ner Chanukah, and the second one is about how we praise God for all the miracles. Okay, now we go to 3. You already gave it away. What's 3?
First day of Hanukkah.
What?
3 blessings.
On the first day of Hanukkah, we recite 3 blessings. What's the third blessing? Shechayanu, which is a blessing you say when a holiday that you haven't observed since the last year arrives. You always start the holiday with that blessing, thanking God that you gave us life, sustained us, and let us reach this time. So that's the number 3. But there's more 3s that relates to Hanukkah. What other 3s are there? At least 1 more.
Is it 3? Not 3 stars.
3 stars?
3 stars means you can light the Hanukkah candles? No.
No. Okay.
The 3 what?
There are 3 levels or standards of the lighting of the Hanukkah menorah. Is what the Talmud calls the basic level, the Mahadrin, those who want to beautify it, and Mahadrin min ha-Mahadrin, beauty within beauty, or excellence within excellence. What's the basic level of lighting the Hanukkah menorah? That every household lights 1 candle every night. That's the basic level. You know where they had to do that? No, where did they just do the basic level? No, in the death camps. In the death camps, there's stories where they would take the thrown out stem of the carrot and they would scoop out whatever they could scoop out. They would take some oil. They appropriated. I don't want to use the word they stole, because wasn't called stealing. They took some margarine, they used it as fuel, and they took a thread from their uniform, and they used that to light Hanukkah menorah. They couldn't do it. They couldn't do 7, 8. They couldn't go from 1 through 8. If they did it, they did it 1, and that was the basic fulfillment of the mitzvah. That's the first level. The second level is to light a candle for each member of the household. So if you have a family of 4, you would light 4 every night. That's the second level. I don't know who does the second level anymore. Oh, you got connected. The third level of the Hanukkah menorah, it's called the Mahadrin Min HaMahadrin, excellence within excellence, is to light in ascending order. 1 the first night, 2 the second night, 3 the third night, and so on. According to the school of Shammai, you do it in the reverse, 8, 7, 6, but you change every night. Every night is a different miracle that you're representing. So those are the 3 levels. And it's the only practice in Judaism where there are 3 levels. In any other area of Jewish practice, there's always a basic level, and then you can go beyond that. And sometimes it could be, as much as you want. You can keep on going beyond. So that's the number 3. Number 4, I only have one answer for number 4, but maybe you're more creative and you'll think of more of answers. What is there 4 of in Hanukkah? Yeah, that's it.
4 sides of the dreidel.
That's right. A dreidel has 4 sides with 4 letters. The Nun, Gimel, Hey, and Shin, standing for Nes Gadol, a great miracle. Haya, Sham, was there. So we have 4 sides to the dreidel, and some commentators point out that those 4 are not just random, but they represent the 4 exiles that the Jewish people lived through. The exile of the Babylonians who destroyed the first temple, the exile of Persia, where the threat to annihilate all the Jews existed. Then there's the exile of Greece, where they tried to get rid of Judaism, to Hellenize Judaism. And then there's the Roman exile who destroyed the second temple. And the dreidel symbolizes that all these different empires eventually collapse and crumble, and we are still here. That's a message that we should publicize to the anti-Semites, the newfangled and the old-fangled anti-Semites that are coming out now more and more.
Except in Israel, right, there are 4 sides, the last letter is different.
Right, that's okay, but very good point. In Israel, since they can't say the great miracle happened there, they substitute the letter Shin, which is Sham, there, for the letter Pei, which is here, Po, here. It's also interesting to note that the 4 letters of the dreidel, letters, as I mentioned many times, are also numbers. They add up to 358, which is the numerical value of the word Mashiach. That Hanukkah revolves around the theme of Mashiach in many different ways. In Israel, where it's a different letter, it adds up to 138. And 138 is the same numerical value as the word, the name Menachem, which the Talmud says is one of the names associated with Mashiach. So either way, it's connected. Any other 4s? I don't have any other, but if you have, I'll be glad to include it. Okay? Maybe there isn't any other 4. 5. Anyone for 5? 5 going once. No 5s? Yes, 5 Maccabees. Maccabees were the original heroes of the story of Hanukkah. They and their father, does anyone know their father's name?
Not
Yes, Matityahu. So he had 5 sons, and they were the heroes of Hanukkah. Another 5, I don't expect you to guess this. When we say the prayer Al Hanisim, the prayer for the miracles, there are 5 expressions of deliverance. We say you, God, delivered the strong into the hands of the weak, number 1. The many into the hands of the few. The impure into the hands of the pure. The wicked into the hands of the righteous. The wanton sinners into the hands of those who occupy themselves with your Torah. So there are 5 expressions of deliverance. Number 6. If you don't remember number 5, you can figure out number 6 as well. The heroes of Hanukkah are, if you count the father, then it's 6, 9, and there's 5 sons. But I'm going to give you another. Something, you sure? Something is buzzing, beeping over there. I don't know what it means. Okay, we can't help it. That's what technology is.
Use a phone, maybe call is coming in. Call her a message.
Okay. What are the 6 associated with the menorah? There are 6 mitzvahs that surround us while we light the menorah. 1 menorah. And where do we light the menorah? According to the original institution of this mitzvah mentioned in the Talmud, it's not placed in a window. That's a exile form of it. It was placed in the front entrance of your house, so that people outside would see it, but it was at the entrance. Where at the entrance, your mezuzah would be on the right side. That's where you always put a mezuzah, on the right as you enter. The menorah would be put on the left. So you have the menorah, that's 1. The mezuzah is 2. And if you're a man and you're wearing tzitzis, tzitzis have 4 corners to them, 4 separate mitzvahs. 4 plus 2 equals 6. Oh. Now 7. 7 should be easy.
And it's not, that also none of the 9s.
No, we have 8.
You're right, 8. 7 days.
What 7 days of what?
Yeet.
It's true, but it's not connected to Hanukkah.
Why? But it though, isn't it?
Okay, I can't argue with that. What is the Hanukkah menorah modeled after? What was the miracle? The miracle happened not with a Hanukkah menorah, but with the menorah in the temple. And the menorah in the temple had 7 branches. So the whole miracle of Hanukkah is associated with the fact that the 7 branches, the oil that was placed in them, sufficed for 8 days. Another 7, it's associated with Hanukkah. It's about sacrifice. The famous story of Hannah and her 7 sons, who were asked by the king, Antiochus, to prostrate themselves before an idol, and they refused, and they were all put to death. That's one of the heroic stories associated with Hanukkah, the 7 sons. They needed 7 days to procure fresh oil. That's why we needed the miracle, because they only had enough for 1 day, and it would take them 7 additional days until they can procure fresh oil. They had to travel to the region where oil was produced, or another opinion says they had to go through the purification process that takes 7 days, and that's when they were able to get the oil.
7 days.
No, 8. This should be a very... The 8 days of Hanukkah. On the last day of Hanukkah, we light a total of 8 candles. But one more 8, a very important one associated with Hanukkah. It has to do with the decree of the Greeks, of the Syrian Greeks. What was their greatest, to what was their greatest opposition? They were opposed to circumcision more than anything else. What did they not like about circumcision? So 3 things. Again, this is not, I don't think it was written in any of their texts, but this is speculation, but we can understand why they didn't like circumcision. Number 1, the Greeks glorified the human body. The Olympics, they would not be dressed when they played their sports because they glorified the body, and to them, circumcision was mutilating the beauty of the body, of the human body. Number 1. Number 2, the whole purpose of circumcision was to separate the Jewish people from the rest of the nations of the world, that we have a special covenant. Of course, they didn't like that either. And thirdly, the whole idea of circumcision is associated with the number 8. What does 8 symbolize? If you have to use the symbolism of numbers, well, what does 7 symbolize?
The creation.
Well, I think what Max said, 7 days of the week. The world was created in 7 days. So when you go to the number 8, you're saying there's something that transcends nature. That nature is not God. Nature is limited in the creation of God. God is associated, the transcendent aspect of God, with the number 8. So when you have circumcision that takes place on the 8th day, by design, it was intended to be at the 8th day, not before the 8th day. In fact, if someone has to have a bris and they're not willing to do it the right way, it should be strongly discouraged for them to do it before the 8th day. Rather do it the 9th day, the 10th day, the 30th day, than to do it the 7th day or any day before that. Yes?
Is there any thought in Judaism in regard to that God wanted circumcision so that we should always remember that we are not perfect, that only God is perfect?
Yes.
Is that?
That's yeah, that could be part of it. Yeah, sure. That Abraham was imperfect. He was at 99 years old. He lived a very accomplished life. He did so much for God. He was the greatest hero and was willing to give his life. And God says, you know what? You're imperfect. You, at the age of 99, you still have to perfect yourself as if you didn't even begin. So that's one of the messages of circumcision. And maybe they didn't like that either. They didn't like that idea either. Number 9. That should be easy. Number 9, Hanukkah. What?
9 candles.
9 candles, right. If you count the shamash, the candle that you use to light the others, you have a total of 9. That's an easy one. Also, another 9 is what number month of the year is Hanukkah in? It's the 9th month. When do we start counting months? We count days from Rosh Hashanah, but the first month of the year is Nisan. So Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, Av, Elul, Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev. It's the 9th month of the year. That's another 9. 10. 10 is a hard one. Anyone think of a 10? One of the laws of the Hanukkah menorah is that you shouldn't put it too high or too low. What is the height? 20 cubits, 30 feet approximately. Shouldn't put it above that level. What's the lowest you should put it? 10 handbreadths, like 40 inches. Should be above 40 inches. So the number 10 is used there about the minimum height of the menorah.
Now, sorry.
Yeah.
What is that? That being the smallest letter, the most humble, and the Hanukkah is a symbol of our humility before God.
Why Hanukkah more than any other holiday?
This is what she's happy.
I mean, it's true. I mean, anything in Judaism points back to the Yud. But you could say, oh, you started something. Who was of all the 5 Maccabees, who was known to be the greatest hero of them? Yehuda. Yud is Yehuda. So you have, and Yud is 10. Okay, so we have another 10. 11, I only came up with one thing, and it's a little bit indirect. Where did they get the oil from? A region in Israel that was known for its olive oil. And Israel was divided into 12 tribes. And the tribe that owned the olive groves was the tribe of Asher.
50.
And when he dedicated the Mishkan, the tribe of Asher did it on the 11th day of the month. So 11 is associated with the tribe of Asher, and Asher is the one who was known for the fertile land that produced the best olive oil that was used. They traveled all the way there, far away from Jerusalem, to get the oil, specifically from Asher. When Jacob blesses his children, what is the blessing he gives Asher? The blessing of oil, the fat of the land, the oil. 12. What's the connection of 12? The only connection I could find was that in Hanukkah, as I mentioned before, we read the section of the Torah every day. Every day we read a little part of it, of the dedication of the 12 tribes. So we read the first tribe, the first day. The last day we read from number 8 through number 12. 13, the final one. Where? Okay. When the Greeks came into the temple, they didn't want to destroy the temple. They were not like the Babylonians or the Romans who wanted to destroy anything that they didn't like. They wanted to change the direction of the temple. They brought idols into the temple. They contaminated the oil. But they did something else that is not as well known. It's mentioned in the Mishnah. When they came to the temple, they realized that there were different barriers. There was like a barrier after which only a Kohen could go. I wouldn't be allowed, most Jews would not be allowed beyond a certain point. That was only for the Kohen. There was a chamber of the temple, the Holy of Holies, that only the high priest can go, and only once a year on Yom Kippur. But there was also another barrier for non-Jews. Non-Jews were only able to go up to that barrier. They were able to go in the temple, but only up to that barrier. That fence was called the Soreg. When the Greeks came into the temple and they wanted to know what everything was all about, and they were told what it was, they didn't lie to them. The Greeks were incensed by that, and they punched 13 holes into the fence. They breached those. They didn't destroy the fence. They wanted everyone to see the fence, but to see the 13 holes in the fence. When the Maccabees, when the Hasmoneans took over, they had to repair everything, so they patched the 13 breaches. And they instituted that whenever a Jew would come to the temple, he would have to bow down in 13 places, 13 times. So 13 is very much connected to the holiday of Hanukkah. Another thing is that 13 is a significant number in Judaism. Friday the 13th is even better. You can't get better than Friday the 13th. 13 is obviously bar mitzvah is 13, but 13 is the gematria, the numerical value of the word echad, one, of the word ahava, love. and many other 13s. So it's obvious that the Greeks didn't believe in the echad, in the one. And we go back to the first one, and they negated the whole idea of oneness of God and the love that we have for God. Okay, so that covers 1 to 13. We could probably go on and find things in other numbers, but that'll be enough. Okay, quiz number 2. Pick 8 numbers that are connected to Hanukkah of that list. Could anyone?
18.
What's 18? 18 is Chai. But what does that have to do with Hanukkah?
So is it time by.
Right? You're always, I can't say you're wrong. Hanukkah is a time that we get high on spirituality. Right? We get high. The first number I would say, no, is 20. As I mentioned before, you're not allowed to put the menorah more than 20 cubits above the ground. The reason for that is very simple, because people won't notice the light when they look at, people don't look up that high usually, and the whole idea of the Hanukkah menorah is to publicize the miracle. But if people don't see it easily, it won't be publicized. What's the next number? 25. Why 25? Because Hanukkah is on the 25th day of Kislev. There's another thing, very fascinating thing. The 25th word of the Torah is the word or, light. The 25th journey, the Jews in the desert journeyed 42 different places. If you count the different places, the 25th place they journeyed was a place called Hashmona, which is the same as Hashmonaim, Hasmoneans, the family of the priest. The Maccabees were Hasmoneans, whatever that means. It's not even clear what that means, where they came from a descendant of a man called Hashmonai, or it was this town that was called Hashmona. But anyhow, the 25th journey is obviously nothing is by accident, nothing is by coincidence, was 25. Okay, after 25, the next one would be 36. Why 36? How many candles do you light throughout Hanukkah? If you add 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8, it's 36. As 36 is not an arbitrary number. Besides the fact that it's twice high, so you drink twice. 36. But that's not what I'm referring to. The original light that God created lasted for 36 hours. That was a light that was able to, it was more of a spiritual light, not just a physical light. You were able to see from one end of the world to the other. You were able to see things spiritually. What happened to that light? God hid it until the coming of Mashiach. But every Hanukkah we get a glimpse of that light. The light of 36 hours, that's the number 36. The next number I would connect is 44. Why? Because how many candles do we light on Hanukkah? 36 plus 8. If you count the Shamash, that's 44. The next number is 83. If you spell the word Hanukkah without the Vav, you could spell it two ways, without the Vav or with the Vav. Without the Vav, it adds up to 83. 83 is also, I don't know if there's a connection, but the Talmud says that 83 is associated with illness and healing. It talks about 83 different illnesses that having a good breakfast will help you avoid that illness or help you recover. But if you add the Vav to Hanukkah, It adds up to 89. It's the next level, next number. The next number, I would say, is 250. Because the word ner, candle, adds up to 250. And the next number would be 415, just the numerical value of the word Hashmonai, Hasmonean. Okay, that takes care of that. Now we have multiple choice. No one's going to be graded, by the way. Multiple choice. The word Hanukkah means A, holiness, B, freedom, C, dedication, or joy. C is correct. Hanukkah is an 8-day holiday because the battle against the Greeks took 8 days. Anyone for that? The long cruse of oil lasted for 8 days? Yes. Okay. What about the 8 Maccabee, bro? You know, I never knew that they were Irish. You see? Okay, everyone got it right. Some people prefer using olive oil instead of candles. Why?
C.
Right, the miracle occurred with olive oil. We recite 3 blessings the first night of Hanukkah and only 2 on subsequent nights because A is correct. The third blessing of Shechayanu is only recited the first day of a holiday. Now we light the menorah at night. A, because that's when they lit it in the temple. B, light is more noticeable at night. C, more people are home at night. D, all of the above. D is correct. All of the above. Actually, it's not totally correct because they didn't light the menorah in the temple at night. They lit it before night, but late in the afternoon, before evening, and it had to last from evening till morning. So it's not 100% accurate, but it is close to it. And light is more noticeable at night, and who cares if it's more noticeable, because the whole point is to publicize the miracle. That's one of the main objectives of the lighting of the menorah. And also, if they tell us to do it in the middle of the day, many people would not be able to accommodate that because they're busy working. Okay, we use a 9th candle, known as the shamash, because B is correct. We may not benefit from the light of the other candles. Now that we have electric lights, that's not a problem. So the shamash is more symbolic now. It's the one that serves the others. And the one that serves is always higher than the ones that are being served. The shamash is a very humble. You're talking about humility. There is a lesson of humility in Hanukkah, because that shamash never gets any credit for anything. He's lighting up all the candles. He's making everything happen, but no one ever pays any attention to him. Reminds me of a story. We have time? This is a story, goes back 200 and plus years. The city of Nikolsburg in Germany. They got a new rabbi. He was a Hasidic rabbi. His name was Shmuel Shmelke. I don't know what his last name was. I don't even know if he had a last name. Reb Shmuel Shmelke, it's a long story, so you're going to have to bear with me. Reb Shmuel Shmelke was a very holy person. He was one of the greatest rabbis of his time. And when he came to town, shortly after, the leaders of the community called in the shamash. That's why I'm telling you the story. It's about a shamash. Shamash is the attendant, the beadle, the caretaker. And they called him in, and he did all the dirty work. So they called him in and they said, "We want you to tell the rabbi that he's fired." So this guy was flabbergasted. Fired? Why? What did he do wrong? He says, "We pass his house every night and we don't see a candle burning. So the rabbi is not studying Torah. A rabbi that doesn't study Torah at night is no rabbi, and we don't want him." Now this man was one of the most brilliant Talmudic scholars in the world, but he for some reason, he didn't put the candle in a way that they could see it. So the shamash says, I can't believe that because he's a holy man. Holy. What makes you think he's so holy? Because the first time he came to town, my job was to wake people up in the morning to come to the morning service, and then I go to the rabbi's house and escort him to the synagogue. That was the custom. The first time I see him, I see a venerable old man sitting next to him and studying with him. I never saw this man. I know everyone in town. I never saw this man. So I asked the rabbi, who was that man that you were studying with? And the rabbi says to him, that was Elijah, Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet. And he would come every day. And one day I see a third person there. He had a crown on his head. And I asked him, who was that? You're not going to guess who it was. He says this was a king, one of the kings of Israel, whose name was Menashe. Menashe was the most evil king. He murdered his grandfather Isaiah. He murdered many other people. He worshipped idols. He brought idolatry to all of Israel. At the end of his life, he repented, but he did so much damage. And his soul doesn't find rest until he has to come down again. He's reincarnated. And his life's mission is to destroy idols, to fight against idol worship. And he said the last incarnation, he was a Jew living in a town not too far from Nikolsburg. And this Jew couldn't tolerate the statues, the icons in the church. And he was obsessed with it because he had the soul of this king Menashe. And one day he just came into the church and broke all the icons, and he was sentenced to death and he was burnt alive. So what does that have to do with anything? It says the widow had a family, and she's now penniless, so she came to the community. It's a small community, a poor community, and she asked for the community to support her. And they said, we can't support you. Your husband committed suicide. We don't support people who kill themselves. We have to support other people. You're not eligible. And she argued it's not our fault. So they're going to convene a rabbinical court. And most likely, they're going to call you, Rabbi Shmelka, to be one of the judges. So the king Menashe came to say to him, I want you to have compassion on my widow and rule in her favor. So that's why he saw Menashe there, coming from the other world. And of course, the rabbi was not fired. But what's the punchline of this whole story that relates to Hanukkah? The Shamash was saying how holy this rabbi must be if Elijah comes to him every day and he could see Elijah. The Shamash saw Elijah every day himself, but it didn't even occur to him that he was special. That's the punchline of the story. Well, that's true about the Shamash and the Hanukkah candles. He's doing all the work. He's bringing light to the whole world, without which he wouldn't have any light, and he doesn't get any credit. Well, we just gave him credit, so the Shamash could feel. We may not derive benefit from the Hanukkah candles because D, they're holy and intended only for publicizing the miracle. Do a few more. The reason we light one candle the first night, two the second night, and so on is constantly increase. Yes, the way we perform the mitzvah. There's a principle in Jewish law that the school of Hillel uses, that ma'alin b'kodesh, in matters of holiness, you always go up. You don't reach a certain level and then decide, tomorrow I'm going to do less than today. It can relate to many areas of life. If a person is used to giving a certain amount of money to charity, they should never go down, always go up. We light the menorah in the synagogue as well. Why? D is correct. To emulate the lighting of the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash, in the Holy Temple. Because our synagogue is our miniature temple, and we want to show that This miracle is based on the miracle that happened. This lighting is based on the miracle of the temple. Now we eat latkes on Hanukkah. Why? A, the latkes were eaten by the Maccabees. Potatoes were the only food Eastern European Jews had. The Maccabees used potatoes as a weapon against the enemy. That must be it, no? They are fried in oil, which reminds us of the miracle of oil. But there's another reason that I never knew until many years into my advanced years. And this is that, if you remember, I said before that the Greeks punched holes in the temple wall, one of the walls, and they had to patch them up. What's the word for patch in Yiddish? A latte or latke, and they look like patches. So we have latkes, not just because they're fried in oil. You could eat donuts also. They're also fried in oil. And in Israel, and now in America, it was exported. A lot of people eat donuts. The truth of the matter is, the cardiologist invented this whole thing. But so we eat patches to remind us of what we had to do to patch up the breaches that were caused by the Syrian Greeks. It's customary for parents to give their children Hanukkah geld, not chocolate Hanukkah geld, real Hanukkah geld. Why? A, it helps to educate children to give tzedakah. If you give them something, it becomes their money. And you say, and you encourage them. You don't force them. You encourage them to give some of it to tzedakah, but you have to give a lot of it so they have something left for themselves. We eat dairy foods on Hanukkah. Why?
D
is correct.
To give you more cholesterol, so my part balance is how people miss it.
It helps, yeah. A major victory occurred through dairy foods. Yehudit, who was a sister of the Maccabees, fed the Greek general with salty cheese and then gave him wine to quench his thirst. And when he fell asleep, she decapitated him. And that was a major turning point in the battle. He was a major general. And that's why we eat dairy. We play dreidel on Hanukkah. A is correct. It reminds us of the heroism of the Jewish children who risked their lives to study Torah. When Greek sentries would come to spy on them, they would take out their tops and play. We don't know that for sure, but that's the reason always given. But there's a deeper reason, as I mentioned before, that the four sides of the menorah and the four letters symbolize all of the different exiles we had to endure and how eventually we come out on top. On top, no pun intended. Okay, the four letters of the dreidel. C is correct. Nun, Gimel, He, Shin. Now we light the Hanukkah candles before lighting the Shabbos candles because of B. Once you light the Shabbos candles, you can't light the Hanukkah candles. And that's it. We did all of them. There's a code that I invented. It's not really invention, but they maybe in World War II, if they would have used this, they wouldn't have been able to decode it. I call it the Beit Shammai Mezuzah code. How does that work? Beit Shammai goes from 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. So every word changes the number from 8 to 7 to 6. What is mezuzah script? And the outside of a mezuzah, they have 3 words. The 3 words are letters that are the letters that follow God's name. Like if God's name is a Yud, you write a Chaf. The next letter, a Hey, you write a Vav. The Vav, you write a Zayin. So God's name changes by the next letter. So if you take any word you have, let's take the word Hanukkah. So you take the C and you count 8 letters after that. And you write down that letter. Then let's say Hanukkah is, the word is, you take the I and count 7 letters. And the S, 7 letters. whatever word, and keep on going until that way the decoders can never figure it out, because they don't know the school of Shammai and they don't know mezuzah code, and you combine the two.
Really. Help.
Okay, any questions? I'm sorry about the Zoom. I don't know if anyone's able to hear and see on the Zoom, but something happened. Technology is very unreliable.
It's amazing.
Oh, you could hear? Okay, good. Any questions? I can't see on the Zoom the questions. And can't hear or see.
Oh, people. They said it.
Okay, I think we got a lot of information about Hanukkah. But there's a lot more. Just the myth that Hanukkah is a minor holiday is somewhat dispelled by what we've covered. Hanukkah is way, way beyond minor. If minor means that you're allowed to work as opposed to other holidays, okay, that's true. But it doesn't diminish its spiritual value. Some people feel that Hanukkah has been associated with a non-Jewish holiday that occurs at the same time. But Hanukkah came way before their holiday, and there's no connection whatsoever. And the Hanukkah gelt is not a way of making kids feel they weren't cheated because they didn't get gifts. It has a totally different objective. One of the explanations the Rabbi gives is that everything that the Greeks did to us, we have a thing that counters it. One of the things Greeks did, the Maimonides describes, is they took our money. So we have to do something with money. What better thing is it to do with money than to give tzedakah, which is something we encourage on Hanukkah, and that we get our kids trained, that they benefit from the money and they're trained to give tzedakah. Then talking about tzedakah, tomorrow we're starting our annual, what we call charity fundraising. Charity is not a misspelling. It's a crowdfunding system where people give money, and we have matchers, so whatever you give is quadrupled because of the people who are willing to give because of your donation. So it's going to go on for how many hours? 36 hours? What? Starting tomorrow at 10 a.m. So you have the flyer? Oh, you gave it out, okay. Everyone should have that. It's too early to wish you a happy Hanukkah. Today is a very special day. I should have mentioned it before. Today is the 10th day of Kislev. This is the day that the second Rebbe of Chabad, known as the Middle Rebbe, he was released from prison on this day a number of years ago. Why was he in prison? Because people who didn't like his teachings and his popularity informed the government against him, that he was trying to set himself up as a rival to the Tsar. The same accusations were leveled against his father, who spent 53 days in prison, it was a capital crime of treason, and now his son. In fact, every Chabad Rebbe spent time in prison, including our Rebbe, when he was in Berlin, the University of Berlin. It was Purim, I think. Yeah, it was Purim. And he went outside and he got up on a bench or something, on a chair, and he started to speak about Purim. And a whole crowd of Jews came, and he didn't have a permit, so he was arrested. And he was bailed out by Rabbi Soloveitchik, the great sage who was also a student then in the University of Berlin. So when the Rebbe got out, he told him, "You can now become a Rebbe." Because he wasn't, the Rebbe was then in his late early 30s and wasn't planning on becoming Rebbe. Anyhow, everyone have a good week.